Welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. On this podcast, Laura
and Shelby, both board-certified nurse coaches, show you how to make as much money as you want in private practice as a nurse coach.
All right, guys, welcome to the Successful Nurse Coach podcast. Today it is Laura, and I have an amazing guest that honestly didn't know he was going to be on this podcast until about 9 minutes ago. And that is my amazing, beautiful, loving, spectacularly supportive husband, Evan Minard. And I talk about him, I think, on so many podcasts. And we've been hinting that we wanted the husbands to be on the show. So we decided today was the day because we had 45 minutes. My son's on his iPad watching YouTube. My daughter's being watched. And I said, today's the day. Let's do it. And he agreed to be here. So Evan, thank you so much for deciding in the last 9 minutes to jump on here and not know what I'm going to ask you and be willing to play.
Well, thank you for having me. I was some nervousness, which actually was exciting. I'm alive today, so here I am.
Awesome. So I think what I really want to convey in this episode is the journey from the partner's perspective, because we have a lot of new nurse coaches listening to this who want to hire us as business coaches. Maybe they want to ask to invest in certification because they desperately want something different for their career or their life. And they're so afraid to ask their partner, or worried of asking their partner for the investment, the upfront time investment and money investment to switch gears. And I'm going to tell a little bit of our personal story just to set it up, because I think it deserves to be told. Right when I was looking at changing my career, I had gone the holistic route. I had been seeing a naturopath. I was unhappy with conventional medicine. So I had been searching at like functional medicine programs and different things for a while. And we had something that blew up in our marriage. So after, I don't know how many years we were married, babe. We were married like 5 years before you told me. But 5 years into our marriage, Evan says to me one night, Laura, I've never been faithful to you. And he confessed that he had had an addiction that didn't allow him to be faithful to me. And it ended up being really hard, but also the most amazing turning point in our marriage. And we really got stronger because of it. But what happened as a result of that and the healing was that I found my voice, because he had really messed up. So obviously I got to say what I really wanted, and what I really wanted was to invest in this program. So that was the catalyst for me being brave enough to even ask you to spend that money. Because when I met you, I was in $100,000 worth of nursing school debt. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. It feels like a lifetime ago. And yeah,
it was.
I feel like our marriage and my relationship personally with money was a catalyst for a lot of issues early on in our marriage. And I wasn't good at communicating, and I had some resentment towards that debt and the amount of work that I was doing, time away from the family to help with paying that off. It was a lot of stress on me. And as I look back and I think about that, that resentment or not communicating those feelings helped fuel some of our problems. And, as we were chipping away at it, as we're getting closer to that, getting that burden off of our shoulders, that's when, about the same time as when I came clean. And then also when you wanted to shift gears, right? And so, that was a pretty big moment in our life, obviously, and a fork in the road and a huge part of our journey. So, but yeah, I had lots of money issues, and I'm deconstructing a lot of that stuff. And so I'm a continual work in progress, and it's been a blessing to work through a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the background of kind of where we started. Is I came home one day and told him I was going to do this certification program. And I think at the time it was like $4,500. Maybe it was $3,900. I don't remember the initial investment. It was a long time ago. But I mean, at that point in our lives, like for me to say, hey, I want to spend more money or go into more debt, when we had just paid off nursing school for me, because I didn't go to nursing school till I was in my early 30s, it was really hard to ask. And you said yes, and that was the first leap. But after certification, I had opened my own business. We had invested a little bit of money here and there in my business. And then the next big ask came, and that was when I was going to hire my first business coach, Christina Berkeley. And it was $12,500 for 6 months to work with her. And after our enrollment call, when I knew I wanted to work with her, and I remember we had the conversation in our bedroom.
I remember that.
And I probably had like a weird look on my face when I asked, because I was so nervous, because I was so afraid you were going to say no. And I just remember saying, like, I know if we spend this money, I'm going to do something really big with it. Like, we're going to make so much money if I spend this money. Do you remember that conversation, or what's your recollection of that conversation?
Yeah, I remember that conversation, and, you came to me confidently. I remember that, and sensing that this was going to really help you. You'd gone through the certification, and you were doing a lot of coaching at the time, but it was a lot of pro bono. And, at the time I was also very much in the mindset of, what's the return on investment? That's always kind of how I've always thought of money. It's either investing it or how's it working for you or whatever. And that was a big shift, trusting that was an investment in you, and that I was going to invest in your business. And it was scary, but I also recognized that at that time it was like, okay, well, if we're not going to invest in ourselves, like, what else is there? Right? I mean, we can invest in all these other things, but really foundationally, like, who we are and who we're showing up and the life we're living is like really investing in yourself. So that's money, that's time, that's energy, all those things. But, I had a real white knuckle grip on money for some reason. And that's a deep seated, sense of lack and scarcity that I probably was raised with and had some issues there. So I was working through all of those. And I also recognized that we just, paid off all that debt, and we were in a much better position, and I trusted you. The confidence that you showed, and knowing that, let's see how this works out, and like letting go, releasing that white knuckle feeling and just saying, okay, let's trust, let's see how it works out.
Yeah. Well, and I was confident, but I was also scared. And I remember I opened a 0% APR credit card that had an 18-month time to pay it. And I figured, okay, if I have to go get a second job to pay it off, like, we're never going to pay interest on this. I'm going to put it on a credit card. I'm going to pay it off. But there was fear there, and there was pressure, because that was the first time we had gone back into debt, even though it was intentional debt. We probably could have shifted things around and paid for it in full, but we chose to do it that way because then it was kind of like on me. And at that time, Evan, we hadn't fully like gone all in financially together. We were still somewhat separate, I think, still at that time. And that's a really interesting point to talk on, because I think that when I'm coaching nurses and they're starting their businesses, I get so many different financial pictures painted in how it is in their marriage. And lots of marriages were like ours, where we got married later on in life. We were in our 30s. You were established. I was in debt and just starting my career. I mean, I was in nursing school when we met. And you had your money, I had my money. And I paid for things and you paid for things. And you always had more. And I always had less, and I knew that. And it felt like, and that was a really heavy burden to carry. And it wasn't until that year that we started to commingle our bank accounts. We started to have real conversations with our counselor, with our couples coach about money, and like, is it really all ours? Because we didn't live like that. And especially around like, even, it was funny because you had a white knuckle on money, but then you also like were super hesitant for budget.
Yeah.
You just wanted your own control. Like, you just wanted.
I did. I liked the separation at the time. I thought that I had more control.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
yeah.
energetically, that obviously didn't feel good for you. And at the time,
Yeah.
I was doing the best I could with my understanding at the time. But like I said, I had these stories about how I've always been successful with money. I've always worked really hard and that, save, invest. So these were the paradigm I was coming in, and I wasn't used to debt.
Hmm.
That was the other thing, is I was not used to debt. So that was a big burden, a big thing that I had to face. But like many things, like money is energetics too. And so that scarcity mindset that there's never enough, because ultimately for me, there were some shifts and there's been shifts since then, obviously, but abundance, there's no dollar amount that gives you an abundant mindset.
Yeah.
And so we had a roof over our head. Our kids were fed. They had clothes. We had all the resources in the world, uh, saving for retirement, doing all this stuff. And so like you take a step back and you say, well, am I really abundant or am I really poor, but I have a lot of money? And so you start recognizing that no matter how much money you have, you could still be really poor mindset because you're not acting abundantly. And so that shift
Yeah.
at that time, and it's grown obviously and changed and molded, but it was like, okay, we need to invest in ourselves and our marriage, and we are a team. So like that huge shift of saying, when you succeed, we both succeed. And so I trust you can do it. And that's really what it came down to, is trusting that you were going to follow your heart, your passion, and go for it. And I was going to support it. And then also it was going to benefit me and the family also.
Yeah. I remember that shift. I'll talk about that moment. We had hired a couples coach because I think our deal was, when I hired Christina, it was a 6-month program. And I remember telling you, and this is funny, and as I think about it, and I coach people around this all the time, is that I was convinced, because I was making like $100,000 a year, a little over $100,000 a year working at Kaiser. And I remember thinking, just give me 6 months and I'll have a 6-figure coaching business. And I think I sold you on that. And because then I would have replaced my income. So in my head, I was a burden on the family for 6 months. And then at 6 months, suddenly I wouldn't be a burden anymore. That's a big ass thing to carry around as a brand new entrepreneur, as a brand new coach, as a mother of 2 small children with a husband who's gone. Like, that was just such a ridiculous order and declaration that I had put on myself. And there when it became evident that that probably wasn't going to be the case, I was making a little bit of money. I wasn't going into the red every month, but I wasn't bringing home what I had as being an employee. And I remember thinking, I'm running out of time, and I felt that pressure on myself. And all it would take from you, Evan, is a little sideways look, or even just a question like, how's it going? Like, how much money have you made? Which I don't even know how many times you asked me that. And I would just bawl. And then, so we hired a couples coach, and I remember the couples coach saying, Evan, do you support Laura's dream? And you're like, yeah, I support her dream. And she's like, well, why is there a time limit? And that was like, and I remember you saying you had your own insight and aha in that moment. And you're like, I'll support her as long as it takes. And as soon as I knew that I had your support for as long as it takes, I think I had my first, at least my first $5,000 or $6,000 month the following month. So it was, as soon as the pressure was relieved and I felt supported, I was able to do so much more in my business. What is your recollection of watching me during that period of time?
Yeah, I definitely remember that coaching session, that counselor coach. And when she said that, it hit me about, when I was trying to get into the fire department, I knew that there was nothing that was going to stop me. And that's the mentality I had. It was like, I don't care how long it takes. I can be 50, 60 years old. I'm never giving up. And I will just continue to try to become a firefighter. And so that mentality I saw firsthand with myself, that commitment to just never giving up, worked so well. And so it was like that same exact aha moment of like, okay, well, what, I did that with myself. Like, why is there a stipulation here? Like, what is it that I'm holding on to? that you need to do this in a certain amount of time. Like, that's not trusting that this is how it's supposed to unfold. Because it was just so much safer to have the Kaiser job, right? I mean, that's the thing, is that when you're the highest paid, it was like the dream that everyone wanted, yet it was very unfulfilling, and it was like soul crushing. So what's the point of making a bunch of money if you're not happy what you're doing? And so that shift at that moment was like, okay, I don't care how long it takes. It's just, here we are, and we're going to go after it. And there's been so many of those. I can't even remember all of them, but it was like the universe just kept saying, okay, all right. So you showed up, you bet on me, or you bet on Laura, like, let's double down again. And it just keeps going. and that's the wisdom you get from experience. It's like every time you do that, it's just another level. And so, when you bet on yourself, there's no one better to bet on than yourself.
Yeah. I feel so blessed that I had you as a partner, even if it was a little rocky in the beginning, but we muddled through and we figured it out. And that couples counselor, we only had 2 sessions with her, or that coach. And she was the mom of another coach, of another really successful coach. And she was a referral from Christina. And she knew the industry. So she knew what I was going through. And it was just having those 2 conversations with her that I felt like we were on the same page. And as soon as I felt like we were both on the same page, then I started showing up so much more powerfully and taking more risks and being more confident and being more empowered. And I'm sure my clients felt that too, because people felt safe to spend money with me after that. And they hadn't felt safe to spend money with me before that. Or there was some block for me because I was having a really difficult time. That was 2019, I think, or 2018. I'm not sure which, when that happened. And then I think the next big double down was when I wanted to go fly out and see Steve.
Yep.
And do you remember me telling you about that? Tell me, I don't remember that conversation as much because I think at that point I figured you were going to say yes. So I didn't build it up as big as the first one.
Yeah. I remember hearing about it, and I don't remember totally discussing the specifics, but we kind of got into what it looked like. And I was just like, another one, I was like, wait a minute, this is crazy. Straight up, this is crazy. But I had already seen you doing so much and you thriving and the passion you had and what you were doing. So, that moment came in, and then I just looked at it and I was like, okay, this is completely crazy, but why not? Right.
Say why is it crazy? Tell the listeners what it was.
I've even done more money work for myself since then. But at the time, the idea of spending, $5,000 for a couple hours seemed completely insane to me. Because you had to fly to Arizona. And, I was just like, what's the deal with this guy? And what's the deal with this process? And what's the deal with, and since then I've had, a lot of aha moments with the idea of investing in yourself and the idea of value versus cost. And so I would say that was a big part of the work I've been doing with myself about money, is the abundance mindset, but also the cost value. And instead of saying something costs something, there's a value to it. And what you put the value as is it's up to you. So it can be a dollar amount, or it can be a time commitment, or it can be a strict, having to fly out to them is a commitment. There's a value to that. So you show up a particular way when you invest that type of money, and you have that type of level of commitment.
Yeah. That was a huge turning point for us. I remember that felt stretchy and crazy to me too, because for those of you who don't know who we're talking about Steve Hardison, The Ultimate Coach. His website's theultimatecoach.com. Amazing Facebook group too, I think it's just called The Ultimate Coach Facebook group. And this was before his book had come out. This was before his rates had doubled. And I had been praying for a coach or a new teacher or a new spiritual teacher. And Steve had commented on one of my Facebook posts. And so I looked into a session with him. It was $5,000 for 2 hours. You fly down for a Be With session. And I wanted to do it. And I had been doing okay. You know, if I had the money, we had the money, didn't have to go into debt. We had the money in my business checking. And but it felt risky and uncomfortable. And even sending that cashier's check to him the first time felt crazy. But then, like, the next month we bought a second house. We like took a risk and invested in an investment property. And then things started happening even before I flew out there, because I think that was a glass ceiling of what we understood value to be, that we busted through as a couple because we were both on board with it. And when I came back from that session, that's what the lesson was value. And that's what Steve and I had talked about right at the very end. And Evan and I did something kind of crazy around that we're not going to share, that even doubled down even further on the concept of value, that money is always coming to us and that we have no problem investing in ourselves or investing in something of value. And we create value, and we created value with that experience that I had with him. And fast forward, Evan hired him for 5 sessions, and he'll be flying out there in November to see him 5 times. So that was a little over a year ago I flew out there, and so a lot has changed since then. But again, that was a huge turning point in our understanding of value. And I say that, I'm going to ask you a few more questions, Evan, but I say that because I know that your first time investing in yourself can be really scary. And then the one of the biggest objections and or resistance that we get from potential clients is I have to talk to my husband or I have to talk to my wife. And we coach around this, around how to have that conversation. Because if I had come to you, Evan, and I had said, if I had sought permission and I was sheepish and I was unsure, you would have not had the same reaction, no. Right? Because how could a husband be comfortable with something someone he knows nothing about, a process he has no information about, and a partner who's unsure, and to say, I kind of really want to maybe hire this coach, and it's $12,500. I know it's a lot, but I really want to do it. Can I? Like, that would have felt a lot different than me saying, I can't tell you why. I know I have to do this. I know if we do this, it's going to change our life.
And we'll figure out a way. And saying that we'll figure out a way to make it work.
We'll figure it out. Yeah, because you don't know if it's really going to work out because you don't have any plan ahead of you. It's almost a gut feeling. It's almost like a Hail Mary jumping off of a cliff with absolutely no apparatus to fly and looking at each other going, don't worry, we can build it while we're falling. Like, we're resourced. We'll fucking figure it out. Excuse my F-bomb. We'll figure it out. I think it takes that kind of mentality to do this entrepreneurial thing over and over and over again. The first time being the biggest, the first time being the scariest. And then it gets less and less, and your comfort with perceived risk gets more and more, and your faith in yourself and your ability to figure it out becomes more and more. Anything else you want to say to the partners who are going to get asked to invest in our program, or even the certification program, but for all the people listening who know they have to have this conversation, anything that you can say to the husbands or to the wives?
I think I didn't really understand what coaching was a lot until you kind of got into it. And early on, I was someone that believed that, hey, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you make it work, you just do it yourself. And so that has shifted tremendously for me, because I look at like coaches as someone that's been there, done it to some degree, whatever you're looking for. And it's just a shortcut. We have it's a cheat code, and we have coaches in everything. I mean, I have coaches in jiu-jitsu. And so the idea that I'm just going to get better at jujitsu without, working with someone or having someone show me things and being an example, it's kind of ridiculous, but that's the mentality I had at the time. And so, it doesn't always have to be money. You can commit with time, you can commit with, other resources. And so, but money is one of those things for me that I was energetically always holding on to really tight. So it's been an interesting exercise of letting go of that. And I can speak for myself that when you let go, the world just flows. It just rains, on you. And that's the idea, is that your scarcity, your feeling of control, your feeling of not enough is really fueling that continued process. So if you have faith and you just trust that, trust in yourself and then trust in your partner, amazing things happen. And that's just the way it happens. I mean, I've seen that with all different aspects of life. And I just go back to, like, there's no better thing to invest in than your well-being of yourself and your family and your loved ones. And so however that looks, people spend money on all kinds of dumb stuff. And why not invest in yourself? And what it also does when you invest in a coach, like you did early on, is it creates an environment where you get really creative because you're invested and you're committed to something. So you find different ways of making it work financially and time and resources. And that's a really good exercise because it just gives you more and more confidence that you can figure things out yourself and with the help of others and relying on other people.
That reminds me of I had just been asked by a potential client if I ever give any discounts because she's a single mom and she's primary breadwinner and she really, really wants to do this, but she couldn't afford our program. And came directly from Steve, but at this point, it would be out of service to make it easy for anyone to do this, because that's subconsciously what I'm saying to you is, yeah, you're right. You can't pay the full price. You're not resourced enough. You're not creative enough. You don't have enough drive to do it. So I'm going to make it easier. I'm going to lower the bar for you. And my heart wanted to do it because I can. And the coach part of me, who I've now become, knows that would be not in highest service to the client. So even the ability to figure it out, like paying for something you're not sure what's going to happen with that credit card bill. And I'm not a big advocate for people to go into debt. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm also saying that not all debt is bad. Not all debt is bad. And depending on your current situation, I literally couldn't drive to work anymore and do what I was doing because it was out of alignment with what I believed about health. And in some ways, I felt like I was harming. And for me to drive in to make that $100,000 a year working at the call center at Kaiser that everybody said was the best job in the world, I would have rather sold our house and lived in an apartment. So also getting super clear with why you're doing it. Like, why are we doing this? Why do we take certs? And why do we start businesses? And why do we hire business coaches? It's not because we're loving the way our life is in this moment. It's probably because there's something so much better and bigger out there. And very few people are brave enough to leap and to do it. And to give the listeners like an idea of where we are at now without being super specific, Evan was able to retire from the fire service instead of staying until he was 55. And we moved across the country and we have kind of a blank slate of kind of whatever we want to create. We were just filling out our school. We just enrolled our kids in school. We finally found a school they were excited about. We just did it yesterday. And on the school application, it asks, who do you work for? And I put for me, self. And what are your hours? And I put flexible. And then it said for dad, what is dad's employer? Self. And what are his hours? Flexible. And I'm like, holy shit. That is bananas, because you and I were both shift workers, working holidays, working weekends. Like, we were owned by our jobs when we first got married, when we first had our first baby. And that was such a trip, because that's, for a lot of people, is the dream, is just to be able to write that down, that I'm self-employed and I have flexible hours. What has it been? I mean, you've been retired now for, let's see, March, April, May, June, July, like 4 months. So not that long. Like, how has it felt for you in this new season?
Yeah, I remember writing that down also. And for another investment property we're trying to get, we're working on getting. So that's writing that down is very interesting. And our discussion about the kids' school, just the idea that we're resourced and money is not an issue for where we want to send our kids. It's just such a gift. And if I really lean into that and really think about that, it's like such an amazing gift. And I'm so blessed and so fortunate. I recognize that. So what does this season look like for me? I mean, I'm just really, really grateful. Yeah.
You're coaching.
And I'm just really grateful for this chapter and excited about the extraordinary life that we're leading. And it's really, really amazing. And the sky's kind of the limit. That's the thing, is our beliefs are what create our reality. I believe that fully. And so our thoughts, words and actions create our reality. And if we can work on those limiting beliefs, and some people have limiting beliefs about money. So then it's going to be a challenge to face that limiting belief. And when you face it, you look at it in the eye and you just say, I'm trusting myself and I'm trusting this process. I just don't, literally the universe opens up. And that's my experience.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I feel like, our ability to give, our ability to, I had a dear friend pass away right when I moved to Tennessee, and I unfortunately didn't get to see her before she passed, but I was able to say, Evan, I think I have to fly out to San Antonio, and I'm going to just book flights, and I'll work from the road, or I'll work from a hotel. And I didn't have to worry. We didn't have to worry about childcare because you were home, and just those kinds of things where if someone really needs us, if someone really needs money, if our kids really need us, if we need time off for ourselves, for our own mental health, there's just so much more freedom. There's so much less resistance of having to move our lives around. And I hear over and over again that people want financial freedom. And what's interesting is if you ask somebody, okay, well, how much money do you need to have to be financially free? And I've done this with so many people, and they'll say, I mean, I think like $1 million, well, not $1 million, but like maybe just 10,000 a month. Oh, no, like they can't answer it because it's not a freaking number. It's a mindset. It's a space that you decide to live in. And tell me
that's
what's up for you.
Exactly right. And that's what is happening right now with so much of our life. It's like, so much of our life. It's like there is no number. It's just, you have to just be that. And that's what I love about that, showing up and being, right? Not doing, but being. And when you're being abundant, it just flows. And so that there's things you can help challenge your being in abundant. And I go back to gratitude, and that's why I'm so grateful. And I have a gratitude practice, but being grateful for where you're at and what you have in your life, just it's literally the mother of abundance. And because you're just seeing how fortunate you are versus like what you don't have. And when you look at that and you practice that, you see that, because what you look for, you find. So it's like a weird hack. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just literally showing up and being abundant, and then it just flows. And I wish I could explain it better, but.
Well, I watched you do it yesterday, and you were feeling more abundant than I was yesterday when you booked your first class flight.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Tell me about that decision. So you're booking. Evan needs to book his flights to fly out to see Steve. So he's got to fly to Arizona every other week for 5 weeks. And I'm like, you need to book your flights. Flights are going up, and we know what dates they are. We need to book them. And all of a sudden, you just say, I just decided to book first class for my first flight. And that's such a different Evan than the one I married, and the one in the beginning of our entrepreneurial journey of, always being practical, always trying to pay the least amount for everything that you do, because you're always saving up for something. And not that you need to be flying first class everywhere that you go, but the fact that even came into your consciousness, like, well, I'm having this amazing experience, and I might, like, what the hell? I've never done it before. I'm in my 40s. We're okay. We're resourced. I'm doing this amazing thing. Why not sit with a little bit more elbow room? And you guys, my husband's 6'4". So if anyone deserves to be in first class, it's probably you, just from a physiological standpoint. But what was the state that you were in when you decided to do that?
Well, I was looking at flights, and I decided, it was like, I don't really ever look at the first class flights, because I have stories about that's for rich people or people who are really resourced, and just the idea of that. And you and I do a lot of work around this about value versus cost, and not saying things are expensive, that it's just not an alignment. Just really kind of focusing on that, because it's just a mindset of nothing is expensive. It's just relative to your life experience at that current moment. So when I was sitting there and I was like about to book it, I'm like, I'm booking like this crazy adventure and this amazing life experience, and I'm betting on myself right now. Let's see what happens. And then why not just put a little bit of, icing on the cake here? Like, let's see what happens. I've never done it. And the idea was, I am abundant. Like, why not me? And so as I was booking them, I have this, there's been stories about how I always want to be humble and I don't want to come off flashy and things like that. But that's really just, if I'm being real honest about it, it's more just a fear of showing up powerfully for who I am, and being too bright. There's a fear of being too bright and too amazing, right? And worrying about what people will think about that. And so when I was sitting here about to book it, I'm like, I don't really care what anyone thinks about it. Really, ultimately, it's just like, I've never done it. And this is me betting on myself right now. As silly as that is, it's like just stepping into that abundant mindset. And we are resourced. And so, I was booking the seats, and I was able to get I would never normally pick the first seat on the plane, 1A, on all legs of that flight. And I said, screw it, I'm doing it, baby. Let's do this. Let's see what happens. And that's another double down moment. And there's fear and there's all these things. And then there's like, just hit click and send it. Like, let's open this wide open, baby, and see how it rolls. And that's just how,
it's fun.
It is fun.
There is something childlike about that too. And I think that creation comes from that more childlike part of ourselves. And that's a lot different than booking a first class flight because you want to be cool, right? Like, there's so many other reasons why someone could choose that. And gosh, I had so many stories about rich people being greedy and rude and unkind. And I would never want to sit up in first class with those people. And then just changing that to, if all things are equal and if I'm creating my reality, and if I can, why wouldn't I be more comfortable on a flight? And it means nothing about me. It means nothing about anyone around me. And I sure as hell don't care what anybody thinks. And I'm going to enjoy the hell out of that comfortable seat that entire time. And just the state that you're going to be in from experiencing that puts you in, it opens up things that are not possible because you've never done it before. And I just think it's silly and small. And we're getting kind of off topic. We'll wrap it up here, you guys. But I wanted to show the journey from what our marriage was like before, what it was like when I decided to become an entrepreneur, the first double down moment when I hired my first business coach, the ability for my business to take care of my entire family and allow my husband to retire, who was primary breadwinner, the ability for us to move across the country to start a new life. And it all comes from the internal work, has nothing to do with the external. It's all our own thoughts about what we think is possible, what we think about money, what we think, how much we trust each other. So thank you so much for saying yes, Evan, 4 years ago.
Well, thank you. For all the spouses out there that are questioning it, I just think about my own journey, and there's a level, and there's forks in the road, and there's a level of trusting your spouse and believing in them. And when you really sit back, when you're, say, later in life and you think about the things you could have done, like let's see what we're made of, and like let's bet on ourselves and see how it works out, and trust that. And it might be uncomfortable, it might be hard, it might be, there might be challenges and emotions and all of those things, and there were for us too. I mean, it wasn't perfect by any means, but that's growth, and that's how you prove yourself, and it's a beautiful thing.
Well, thank you so much, babe, for coming on the show without any planning and any scripting and any preparing, and just trusting me even today to jump on this and do this with me. And this will be super helpful for a lot of our potential clients and not potential clients to share with their spouses or their partners for anything that they decide to do that can be a little bit scary. And we hope that you found value in today's show.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we will see you next week, same time. And my husband, Evan, is also a coach. And what's your email, Evan, if anybody wanted to get a hold of you?
It's my first and last name, coaching@gmail.com. So evanminardcoaching@gmail.com.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great rest of your day.